more on the Greek debt drama. We are joined right now by a Nobel laureate, Robert Mundell. Professor Mundell is recognized as the father of the euro. We're so glad you could come in and talk to us on this day in the newsroom. Thanks so much, Professor. There's a new estimation that Greece needs between 120 and 120 billion euro. And this is very different from the 45 billion euro figure that we heard. If Greece can get this, is that enough? There's some voices out there saying it'll never be enough.
Well, I'm afraid if you gave Greece this money now, it wouldn't be enough because they'd spend it too quickly and they wouldn't do the things necessary. I think there has to be rules in it that make it clear that on a year-by-year basis, the debt GDP ratio and the deficit ratio gets down well below 3%, down to zero if
and that sounds a lot.
But I think it could be handled if the Greeks would be able to demonstrate to Germany and to the other countries that they will keep the line and do this. Now, the Greek government has a problem with the population that's sort of resisting the austerity measures, but there has to be that transformation. Otherwise, the alternative is a big restructuring of the Greek debt.
What are the chances that Greece is able to put in these austerity measures and stick to them? I mean, what you're saying is essentially what we're hearing as well from the German government. In fact, there was a statement released this morning. In other words, we're not going to give you the money unless you come up with a solid plan.
Well, I'm afraid right now I couldn't make a good estimate. I would say the way I feel about it right now is that the chances aren't any better than 50%.
What would happen, let's just say, if for some reason, as you say, the half happens and we don't see it? You said a debt restructuring, a default. Would that be the worst thing if there were an organized default?
No, I wouldn't use the term default. It would be well, restructuring is a little pleasanter word, but it means a lengthening of the debt that will ease the time period at which they give them more time to make the adjustments, and big adjustments are necessary. That's a much better way of doing it.
We did hear someone from Angela Merkel's party, not Angela Merkel herself, say perhaps the best solution is for Greece to temporarily leave or be kicked out of the EU, get their act together, and then come back. How likely a scenario is that?
I don't think that would be a good solution because, for instance, French banks are heavily involved in the debt, and so are German banks. Not so much as the French, but they're in a big sense. So this would be a problem for the euro too. So I don't think this would. The contagion factor would be there.
How much do you feel like the common currency and the status of the common currency is threatened because of what's happening right now?
Well, I keep saying that it's not a euro problem. The euro has been a great solution.
Or do you mean it's not a German problem?
It's a debt problem, a deficit and debt problem. The problem of keep strapping down ministers of finance, keeping the budgets into balance. And I think in retrospect, it was a mistake to have this 3% debt limit because 3% isn't even enough. They should be zero balance for all the countries that have debt GDP ratios over 100%.
But you think that target would be realistic?
Well, right now, can you even get down to 3%? You can't do it. You may be able to do it this year. I think Portugal's trying to do it for this year from about 9% and has promised to do it, but I don't know whether it can be done. But in the next 2 years, they have to get down at least to that. But even further down the line, they have to get down to zero.
Professor, I have to ask you another question. As the father of the euro, we keep coming back to this. Somebody launched kind of a crazy idea saying, why doesn't Germany leave the euro? Because they're the only ones apparently without problems. Is that an easier solution?
It would be difficult. It would break up the euro, of course, completely. And Germany made a commitment to have a common currency with Europe. And at the time of German unification, this was the big deal that was made.
Right.
So Germany's into it for a long time to come. They couldn't leave. I mean, they could leave, but it would be a disaster for Europe.
All right. Professor Mundell, thank you very much. Professor Mundell joining us there, weighing in on the sovereign debt crisis in Europe.